All right. I have too many slides, so I'm going to go fast. And I just had another cup of coffee, so I'm all ready to go. Also, some of you have already showed some of the things as I had hoped that I was going to show a little bit of, so I can zip through it. If anyone wants copies of these PowerPoints, send me an email and I'll send you a PDF, because Eric didn't believe in compressing TIFFs. I'd like to really run through how Eric and I first met up, talk a little bit about Kettle Lake, although it's already been gone through by several people, talk about a very seminal meeting that I think everyone or most people were at are here today.
Hey Joe, can you actually set it to presentation mode so we can see a bigger version?
Bigger version. Okay, hang on. Wait. F5. How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
And then talk about some kettle and brush results, but mostly what I'd like to do is present a little bit of science, but lots of photos of Eric and thoughts from him. In fact, I have one of his PowerPoints to present in rapid fashion. In the 1980s, I had a midlife crisis. It was fairly serious. I was working up in northeastern Montana for the State Geological Survey in Montana, supposedly looking for irrigation water in glacial aquifers, but I became bitten by the saline lake bug. And in particular, why there were so many darn different chemistries in all these lakes within the Medicine Lake drainage of that area. One of these lakes, which some people have mentioned already, is Brush Lake, which is around 350 acres. It's a large lake. It's moderately saline and high in pH. Another one is Kettle Lake, which a lot of people have talked about, and we'll go into that in a little more detail. One of the unusual things about Brush Lake is it has tufa deposits. Tufa is lacustrine calcium carbonate, formed often in association with springs. This piece on the right here is a approximately half-meter high piece of tufa that was formed in a spring in 15 feet of water or so in Brush Lake. And on the left is a piece of tufa that's formed of eroded fragments from other sources, re-cemented into a new platform carbonate in areas of groundwater discharge. You can see groundwater discharge all around these lakes if you look for the signs. This unfortunate fellow is a young bison that did a face plant in some tufa and unfortunately spent the first couple of years of his demise being cemented. There's evidence for climate change elsewhere too in these lakes of the region. Notice there's a drop in the water level, which is apparent from the island in the middle of this lake. That represents the decline in lake level between 1983 and 1989. When lakes go through drought periods, as was going on in that period, they go down in water level. And some of these lakes are absolutely saline. They're brines. They form sodium sulfate. You can see the fresh water coming in on the lake margins, which is where it tends to do. And in the middle of the lake, the white salts. So it's a real diverse suite associated with the extremely dry climate of the area. So how did Eric and I actually get together? First of all, I met Dan Engstrom, Sherry, and Herb Wright at a 1991 conference in Saskatoon, after which they visited Brush Lake and actually took a short tour. Later, out of the blue, 4 years later, Eric called me. I didn't know who Eric was. He said, tell me about any lakes in Montana you know that are worth coring. And as George, I'm sure knows, this has probably taken place with a number of other people over the years. We talked for over an hour, and it was the start of a special friendship. I suggested he might consider coring brush or kettle. I knew more about brush than kettle, but I'd been introduced to kettle and had water chemistry from it. And this unusual factor was it was the freshest of all the lakes up there. So George has already talked about the coring of Kettle Lake in 1996. There was a seminal 1999 workshop, which was at the St. Croix office of the Minnesota Museum of Science. It's the first time I met Eric, and I met all these other people too, many of whom are at today's meeting. And I just want to tell them all what a uplifting meeting that was for me, because I was so dumb about paleolinology, and I really learned a lot that week, that couple of days we were out in St. Croix. Kettle Lake was cored in '96. Brush Lake was cored in '99 and 2003. In '99, it was without funding. We had a grant with NSF in 2003. Here's Eric setting off to punch a hole with his auger for the first core. You'll notice it's cold there. You can tell because everyone has full face mask on, and Eric even has donned his hood. It was in fact about 30 below with wind. Here they are setting casing and trying to keep the casing from freezing. Here they are pulling up a core push from that first hole. And here they are about an hour later when even the photographers were not able to keep their hands from in front of the lenses. So in the words of Eric, damn it, dude, let's go bowling. We said, we're going to just get the heck out of here and head somewhere until it gets warm again. That's Kendrick Brown, then of Duke University, one of our grad students from WVU. Here we are, freezing but happy. At least we're not freezing with water on our hands. Over at Theodore Roosevelt National Park. That's Eric. There's Kendrick Brown, I believe. Doug Smith, who was our host at that time. Here we are at the North Unit of TR Park. And lo and behold, 2 days later, it was 30 degrees warmer. And you can tell because all the hoods are gone. In fact, one glorious day, we actually had t-shirts on when it was 15 degrees. It was wonderful. And we picked up a total of 5 cores in the 2 coring expeditions with a lot of variety. And Eric was pretty excited. So let's take a look at some of the data sets that came out of this for Kettle as well as for brush. I can point out now that Kettle was, in Eric's mind and in mine too, much preferable to brush for the quality of its Holocene record due to the more intense faulting in the lower brush sediments. We'll see some of that. Here is the age dating curve from C14 dates for Kettle Lake. And you'll notice there are some slumps in the bottom. Eric called them slumps. Geologists would probably call them faults. I'll call them slumping faults. And you can see how out of correspondence the age dates are for this interval here. That's because of the slumping. In fact, you could see the slumping, although sometimes it was hard to discern. It only influenced about 2 to 3 meters of the Kettle Lake core, so we were able to cut it out and reconstruct the core. These sediments were finely laminated. And of course, when we all saw these photos for Kettle initially, these 2 were for brush. We all thought, gee, varves, we'll start varve counting. When we took a careful look at these cores, that was clearly not going to be feasible. For although you could correlate between different intervals of the core where you had distinctive lamination couplets, in other areas, thicknesses of units were greatly different, suggesting there might be some sediment transport within the lake, maybe even some bioturbation from organisms that were living in the bottom sediments. And in brush, the problems were even worse. Clearly, there was some massive faulting that had really disrupted the bottom 5 to 6 meters of the core. So that was one of the reasons it was so difficult to put the record together for brush. Kettle also had this really unique occurrence of Screwbite. I was the person who did the XRD and interpreted the results for Screwbite. And I'll be honest and say I had not a clue what Screwbite was when I first saw it pop off the Search Match program. I looked it up and said, magnesium ammonium phosphate, where would we find this? And the answer is between about 5,000 and 8,000 years BP radiocarbon, it was common. Before that, it was not common. And after about 45 years, it didn't occur again. The interpretation was that it was a guano mineral. In fact, Eric went through the greatest joy writing up the section in the Screwbite paper about all the places that are unsavory that you find Screwbite today, including rotting corpses that have drowned and pig manure lagoons. So he really enjoyed that part. I don't know, he has a perverse sense of humor. But at any rate, the mystery was, of course, who did it. And we think the source of the organics was from birds, based on the nitrogen-14 work we did. In addition, why didn't it happen after 4,500 years? And we think it was a lake that when the Screwbite occurred in these lakes, it was a very low water stand prior to 5,000 BP. And after about 4,500 BP, the lake filled in with sediment and Kettle actually wasn't a wet lake during severe droughts anymore. It's only about 10 meters deep now. That's in contrast to Brush, which is 22 meters deep. Another tool for interpreting the paleolinology of these lakes are the mineralogic abundances of the endogenic mineral, which is aragonite, and the allogenic or aeolian minerals, which is pretty much everything else. We know that aragonite is endogenic because there are thermodynamic reasons it is not preserved more than around 50,000 years. It's a polymorph of calcium carbonate and inverts to calcite. The aragonite abundance indicates humid conditions when it's high and dry conditions when it's low. Here's the 1930s drought, starting in about 1926, going out to 37 and recovering. And the quartz and other silicates are more or less an inverse of that. I think that Sherry already showed some pollen data from this course, so we'll pass over it. We've talked about that already. This is a lot of numbers here. Please just pay attention to the TDS values, which are different for groundwater inflow for both Kettle and Brush, but by a different magnitude. And using chloride as an indicator of a conservative solute, we can calculate that Kettle Lake is 1.8 times more concentrated than its source water, and Brush Lake 8.7 times. This is not a function of paleoclimate, it's a function of the hydraulics of the lake. And also notice that calcium is, despite the fact that it's evaporatively concentrated in both lakes, really lower in the lake water than the groundwater. That's the aragonite precipitation. Okay, some later trips to northeastern Montana by Sherry and Paul Baker and Eric were to collect some sub-bottom seismic profiles. We collected some additional data, hasn't been published yet. Here's Doug Smith and Pieter Mueller at Doug's Chalet in Dagmar, Montana, which has hosted generously a lot of the scientific expeditions up there. Thank you, Doug. And here's Eric at Kettle Lake examining an exposure of Selaginella, which I saw in Sherry's pollen diagram showed up the last 3,000 years. He was really excited to see this. Okay, Eric, come on, let's go. Eric. I think all of us have had that experience at one time or another. He was easily distracted by things of scientific interest. And we've talked about the Parker's Pit expedition already. Here's Russ and Eric. Eric was in charge of hanging the hoist that year and probably every year because he was so good at solving problems. Fish Lake was sort of a trip that Eric and I went to for fun, I think. We didn't really get involved because they had a mob of grad students and scientists there. But I noticed that Eric's always smiling. In fact, in both these pictures, Eric is smiling at the camera. Who else but Eric would smile holding someone else's backpack? I've only known Eric to frown and scowl once, and that was when he was talking about birthers and Donald Trump. One thing that we did together, Eric, Jane, Ann, and myself, is went to Hawaii in 2013. There's a whole bunch of pictures I have of those. This is from the west coast of Molokai where we stayed. But Eric, it turns out, has a whole PowerPoint he's put together that shows the whole trip. I'd rather show that if I can. We may not get through all of it. So in closing, I don't think I could say things as eloquently as Kathy and others have about Eric, but hey, Guy, we really miss you. And if I can real quickly show you Eric's PowerPoint from Molokai, you'll notice as you watch this that Eric was really good at documenting things and explaining them to other people. It was one of his natural talents. In fact, he was planning this all the time we were over in Molokai. We stayed on the Big Island in a house offered to us by a couple of gay guys. It was wonderful. We had a great time. I wish we could do it again. In fact, I was just telling Jane the other day, I wish we could do it all over again. So I'll let this run for a while we set up the next talk. I think we're still on time, aren't we?
More or less. I figure with the Big Lebowski quotes, you deserve an extra minute to show these.
Yeah. Well, this is 90 slides. This talk will have had, including Eric's slides, 123 slides. I've never had this many in my life. This is our buddy Kimo and his pig that he ate that summer. That's, on and on and on. That's the town of Kalpana, which was overrun by lava in 1998 and great for lava hikes. And that there is Pu'uo'o's current lava tube in 2013. And Eric's probably going to take us all the way through the park. I want to stay on time for other people, but I'll leave this running until Buzz kicks me off. Thanks to Buzz and all the folks that helped run the show. This is a great experience. I wish we could record it. We are recording it, right?
You bet. Yeah, and we will be posting it to the events YouTube channel once everything is downloaded. And yeah, we will send it
Jane, hi. Hi, Jane. I'll run through this. If anyone wants a copy of it, I got to go. Wait till Eric and Jane had me photograph their first snorkeling trip in open water. So this is their loss of snorkeling virginity. It's coming up here in a second or so. See if I can speed it up. If I speed it up, it'll just get worse.
I'm curious if you would have used this for a brown bag at the Illinois State Museum.
I wonder. There's 94 slides, so it would go with a lunchtime talk. He sent it to me, but I never really looked at it before. And I had some slides put together, but said, geez, Eric is good. That's Jane making drawings wherever she went. And then we visited Mauna Loa. We didn't hike to the top, but we thought about it. And that's Mauna Kea, and the cinder cones are right outside Mauna Kea. This is us flying to Molokai, which is, I think, the most beautiful island. These are the sea cliffs on the North Shore and waterfalls on the flight over from Maui. And we stayed over here at Kaluakoi, which is this place right here. And hopefully Eric and Jane are going to start swimming soon. That's the dead golf course there. If you ever have a chance to go to Hawaii, don't go to Oahu, go here. Bird of paradise, bananas. Eric did all this research on his own. I didn't know what he was doing. And that's the beach that's about a half mile from the condos we stayed at. And they're going to start swimming soon. I know. There they go. Yay!